think that you can actually do to change that dynamic. And what I would argue, many people on the right who are very frustrated, typically DeSantis supporters, because DeSantis hasn't been able to make any inroads in this race, they're upset that Donald Trump is has a commanding lead in this race. Well, that's who people better prefer. And there's only so much that you can do to change that. And I think that that's what they're experiencing now. You can't change it. Donald Trump, how is it that Donald Trump's popularity rises even a little bit after a debate that he was not even participating in?
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the CVMK Show Experience. CVMK Show, because it is what it is. I'm your host, Cody Brennan Marshall Kelly, aka Mr. CVMK 33 himself. We have an amazing episode. You know, if you're like me and you're tired of politics, this season is extremely annoying. It's annoying for a couple reasons. We're about to head into the presidential debate campaign season. We're a year away, basically, from Super Tuesday. And the heat, or I should say the race, is heating up, right? We have a lot of newcomers on both sides. Democratic challengers like Marianne Williamson, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to rising meteoric stars like Vivek Ramaswamy. And it's hard. You know, I don't know. It doesn't matter what political ideology you have or the ideologue that you subscribe to, I should say. Politics is very confusing today because it seems it's like there's a lot of extremism. There's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of indifference. There's callous. And on one hand, you don't want to be the compromise, nothing ever gets done, kind of marshmallowy type. On the other hand, you don't want to be the extremist that rules with an iron fist, because that's not democracy either. That's what we call a dictatorship, autocracy, something that this country is not, right? So I brought in a guest, a subject matter professional in this, because he knows more than I do in this. You have seen him on the Roland Martin Show. You've seen him on News Nations. You've seen him everywhere. He is his own brand, and he's a rising star. So I want to welcome to the CVMK Show back, Malik Abdul. Malik, how you doing today?
Back to where it all started.
Yeah, definitely. Back to the grind, man.
No, I actually appreciate that you're still doing this, because I remember when you started. So That's why I said it's back to where it all started. I appreciate, and I know I understand the grind. Trust me, I do. But I don't know more than you. I just read. That's all I do.
No, trust me, you know more than me, man. It's you know what happened. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not saying I felt bamboozled by the Biden administration, but I did feel a little played. And maybe I had false expectations, because what I wanted was common sense. The former president, I just wanted him to take it down a few levels, be presidential, just do the job. Like all other crap, don't do that. Just do the job, get off Twitter, do the job. And then when Biden got in, I was like, okay, Biden, I need you to, if you're going to be this, we're going to get rid of student loan debt, I need you to be the maverick and get it done. And I felt like he's just kind of the old guy that isn't doing anything, and we're all waiting for him to retire. And I'm not saying that's who he is or that's what he's been about. But in a sense, you feel like, you went with the safe bet that turned out to be a bad bet. You look at the inflation, you look at the rising cost of living, you look at now what they're reporting, what they've been hush about is the also rising unemployment rate, because it was such a strong economy. And now they're saying, whole percentage point rises, and they can't slow it down because it was a lot of what I would call false growth, right? And it was really, I hate to say this, off the heels of things that were already in motion. And he did some things. I give him the infrastructure bill that has not really been agreed upon. And I give him the CHIP Act. I give him some things. I give him the executive signing. But if we do give him an evaluation, I don't think most people would say A. I don't think most people would say B. I don't even think most people would say C. He's like a try-hard D+. But there's been a candidate recently, and I want to ask you this question. He's rising, whether you agree with him or not. He stood on stage at the first GOP debate, and arguably, from at least an engagement, excitement, clickbait standpoint, he won it. Now, you could argue substance, policy, and that's for later on the show. But what are your initial thoughts of Vivek Ramaswamy?
Well, I'll actually start out just before I answer that. I'll say that a lot of what you're seeing now, the malaise that people have around Joe Biden, is really it's twofold. Part of it is the unrealistic expectations that we have of a president of the United States. I say that as someone who had a lot of expectations of what would happen transitioning from a George Bush administration to an Obama administration. And I realized that a lot of those things that I expected Barack Obama to do or change as president were unrealistic. What Joe Biden was able to do is to tap into this sentiment, the dislike, the disdain, feelings about Donald Trump. And so it ended up kind of culminating in a perfect storm where Kamala Harris wasn't a benefit to Joe Biden on the campaign because Joe Biden would have naturally won the black vote either way. But I do believe that the expectations that people had of Joe Biden and a lot of those selling points, the thing that you referenced, the student loan. But even before the student loan, keep in mind that there was this deal on the minimum wage. Right. That Biden said that he would raise the minimum wage. Well, what happened with the minimum wage deal? There were members of the House decided that they didn't want the plan that Mitt Romney and some of the Republicans were working on, where it would be raised to $12 and then incrementally after that. They didn't want to go with that plan. They didn't want to go with the plan on the police reform bill. So right now we don't have any police reform, a police reform bill. And because Republicans and Democrats are at fault for that for sure. But Biden was the one who said that when he got in office, one of the things that he wanted to do within his first, I believe, 100 days was to pass the George Floyd's Justice and Policing Act. Right. Well, didn't get anywhere with that either. So there are a number of things that people wanted that I say that actually appeal to the emotions of a lot of people in many ways, much like Barack Obama and even a Donald Trump for that matter. It appealed to that visceral feelings that we have about certain things. But presidents, as we've seen time and time again, will continue to disappoint us in that area. On the issue of Vivek Ramaswamy, I actually felt better about Vivek Ramaswamy before the debate than I did after the debate. I didn't have any strong opinions on him. I thought, it's like, oh, he sounds like an articulate guy. He's a young guy. Yeah. But during that debate, what I saw from Vivek Ramaswamy is an inauthenticity that I did not see in Barack Obama. So I don't even think that the comparisons to Barack Obama are fair. And I say this as someone who, I always say this because I was a Democrat at that time. I was the head of the Obama nation. So you could not say anything about Barack Obama because I was going to be, you was going to get it. And I felt that way about Barack Obama because I believed him. What I saw from Vivek, I don't actually believe anything that Vivek said. It sounds good. Yeah. And it sounds good in a way that is cut straight from central casting. If you wanted a Hollywood actor or a script written in and you needed somebody to play this new age, maybe Gen, I don't know what he is, Gen, whatever he is, 37 years old, this Gen Z or this,
he's a millennial.
One of them. Vivek Ramaswamy would be the person to star in that movie. He's very impressive. He's very articulate. He has a lot of zingers, and it's a particular zest that he has in the way his wit, where his comebacks. It reminds me of a combination of Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke.
Beto, yeah.
He actually reminds me of a combination of those things. And some of the positions that Vivek has taken around affirmative action, that's a no for me. Yes. The position that they've taken, some of these other things that he and even, others like Ron DeSantis have done, around criminal justice reform, that's just a no for me. I think that Vivek, even though he accused Ron DeSantis of doing, and I believe him, but I believe that Vivek is more of a weather vane than is Ron DeSantis.
I totally agree. So I'll go good, bad. Good was the boldness, as you mentioned, the candor, the charismatic appeal, the articulation, the willingness to be the first quote unquote conservative to go to the Breakfast Club and to be in an arena that I'm sure he's not familiar with, to go through Tez, to go through Charlemagne and Envy,
which I thought was a terrible interview, by the way.
No, that was a terrible interview. It was nothing but him and Tez going back and forth. But it was funny. It was funny for like if I'm just trying to create, brain wasted space funny, right? Not like I learned anything. But I give it a credit. I give it A for effort. And I think, having the ability to found a pharmaceutical company, a drug manufacturing company that treats Alzheimer's disease. That's his second company that he founded. I think those things do resonate and speak and stick to a particular audience because he's not the typical politician. And maybe because the right hasn't really had that type of fire, and particularly in youth for some time, if at ever, it almost seems refreshing. But I do agree with you. And I agree with your point. There were automatic no's for me. His stance on affirmative action, no. Like the complete blatant no. His immigration policy, real shaky and real no for me because like it's callous. It's like a backhand. Like, hey, look, you need to at least show the nails, right? So it's just there's a lot of different steps to that, but no candidate's
the perfect. Civics test to be able to vote.
Yeah, that's what? Like a poll tax. That's literally like the definition of a poll tax.
Like bro, you just started voting. You said that you just started voting. Yeah. And I think in the last 2 election cycles. Yeah. You just started voting. You're 37, and you want to give a civics test to people.
That's what I think Governor Christie said something. He said Chat GPT. It almost feels manufactured but scripted. Like his team is so. I'm not saying he's not smart. He is smart. I'm not saying he couldn't come up with these puns by himself. But the timing is just too scripted. Like, there's always this theory, like in the NFL, like, all the games are really decided before they start. There's the NFL script, right? And that's what they always say. Mm-hmm. This feels a lot like a very scripted event. The problem is, and I throw it back to you, if this is just a publicity stunt, let's say Tesla and Figueroa is correct. This is just a publicity stunt. He's going to write a book, sell over 1 million copies, and pay for the campaign ad that he spent for, right? What is the strategy of the right? Because if this is the campaign, if this is the publicity stunt, there is obviously no other front runner but the one who is under indictment right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is said about any non-leading candidate. It was said somewhat about Barack Obama. If you want to make a comparison to Barack Obama, if you look at what Barack Obama's poll numbers were this time in 2007, as opposed to when he ultimately won the nomination, Hillary Clinton was beating Barack Obama. No one thought that Barack Obama had a chance to win. People thought that Barack Obama was running to be Hillary Clinton's vice president. And they say the same now because Donald Trump has such a commanding lead that everybody else who's not Ron DeSantis is either running for a VP slot or a cabinet slot. I disagree with Tesla, and I don't think that this is any type of psyops campaign or anything on the matter of Vivek. I think that Vivek believes that if a Barack Obama or if a Donald Trump could be president of the United States, I'm younger, I'm fresher. Why couldn't I be president of the United States? I think that if he could win the presidency of the United States, Vivek would actually embrace that. So I don't think that it is part of a ploy at all. I just don't think that, and you're asking about the strategy from the right. I think that the strategy from the right is that no one is going to take him seriously within the Republican Party itself. Look at the landscape of where Vivek's support actually comes from. It's not from die-in-the-wool Republicans. It is people on the right. People on the right who include independents and libertarians who are not Republicans, who don't advocate on behalf of the Republican Party, but they happen to vote for the Republican candidate in every presidential election. Vivek has a lot of support from that wing of the right, not within the Republican Party itself. And even though some of the polling does have Vivek, he has gone up in the polls, depending on which poll you look at. Vivek can be either in third or fourth place. And I believe he benefited from the debate in that sense. And there will be additional rules that the RNC will have in order to qualify for this upcoming debate. And I expect Vivek to actually qualify for that as well. And I expect him to do well in that debate. It still doesn't change what you ultimately say. It still doesn't change that at the latest poll, Donald Trump is now at 59%, which is up 1 percentage point from where he was before the debate. And Donald Trump didn't even debate at all. So we can expect a number of people, even the candidates, a number of those candidates won't qualify for the upcoming debate. And so at some point, the field will winnow down. But the shine will eventually wear off of Vivek Ramaswamy. You've seen the incoming that he's getting from Chris Christie, but also Nikki Haley. And I believe that Nikki Haley is the one who will be able to take him out, especially after Vivek decided to, in his retweet or tweet referencing Nikki Haley, uses her actual name, her first name, Nimrata, for reasons beyond me, other than to send a dog whistle that, she's an Indian who don't use her name, even though Nikki is her legal name.
That's true. But we're going to get into it. I want to cover the full landscape because there's a lot of personalities, and honestly, the politics is better than The Bachelor because there's no telling what's going to happen. I just watch the news and just sit there and laugh. So just a quick word from my sponsor.
There's a hero in all of us waiting to be unleashed. All it takes is just that one last push. Activate the hero within with CVMK Global Supplements. All natural, steroid-free, designed to enhance performance, build muscle, and increase energy. You are unstoppable. You can do this. Become your own hero at www.cvmkglobal.store.
Now go to www.cvmkglobal.store. I got with me the vegan protein right here, Transform. I know you can see it. I got it in chocolate vanilla, but we have a new protein coming out for the Whey users. It's called literally The Whey. It's going to drop. Mark your calendars in 30 days. So you got the fall coming. I want you to fall into shape. Get your proteins, your BCAAs, get it all. www.cvmkglobal.store. Subscribe to this CVMK. Okay, look. Vivek is having, I almost combined the two. Vivek is having a Howard Dean moment. 2004, John Kerry, Howard Dean. Howard Dean gets this push and he BRs himself out of the race. Dave Chappelle takes the script and just runs with it, and we never hear from Howard Dean again, right? Like that's kind of what the feel is like. And I think that the more he speaks, the more you see that, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And we're seeing it unfold before our very eyes. The problem is this. No side has presented a clear challenger. And honestly, this just feels like 2020 all over. Again, at least to some degree, right? On the left, we have RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, are the two, I guess, challengers, but nobody's ever primaried an incumbent, and they're not going to do that, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. It's unprecedented. At the same time, there's a lot of rumbling, and I think it's the best way to say it in the Biden administration. You go to the right, you know, you have the Larry Elders of the world, you have the Christies, the Nikki Haley's, the Tim Scotts, the Mike Pence, the Governor Assas, right? And it's like, it's just too much. And I think a lot of us, if we want to be honest, we want the main people to be on stage right now. I think if you said if we could speed it up, we would speed it up. But the problem is that Joe and is that Donald? Like, you know, like they're both so enigmatic that it's like how does this work, right? Like, what are you foreseeing? Because I have no, at least I don't think the Democrats are going to switch the game plan, and I don't see Joe retiring, even though people are like, he's going to retire. No, he's not. Like, I've never seen that. Has a president retired before? You know, so, you know, I mean, all presidents kind of stay in office until they can't, right? So are we just doing another rematch? Is that what we're going down to?
Well, yeah, but I do believe that there is something in you're right when you said that incumbents, it's not normal for incumbents to be challenged in an election. So the idea that Robert Kennedy, you know, RFK and Marianne Williamson is challenging Joe Biden, I don't think that would matter. But even if it weren't them, the way that the Democratic Party has decided to structure the Democratic primary, where they're now going to bypass Iowa and New Hampshire, and they're going to start out with South Carolina. South Carolina benefits the most resource candidate in the race, and that candidate is Joe Biden. So by default, because of the decision of the DNC and the Biden campaign to actually change the rules, it will ultimately benefit Joe Biden either way. Not even a Gavin Newsom or no other candidate will be able to have the ready-made infrastructure in a place like South Carolina to actually win. And South Carolina is important because South Carolina is the first winner-takes-all state. Even if they were still doing the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire caucus, in the New Hampshire primary, which the Republicans are doing, even if they were doing that, someone could win Iowa, a different person can win New Hampshire, and then by South Carolina, the person who wins South Carolina, because it's a winner-takes-all state, they win all of those delegates, and they would have more votes than what any candidate got in either Iowa or New Hampshire combined. So that's the important part about South Carolina. So I don't think that the Democratic Party, part of the problem that the Democratic Party has, we've seen in the polls that both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are unpopular. Donald Trump has been virtually unpopular since he became president. When he was elected president of the United States, if not even before then. But we have seen Joe Biden's popularity actually go down. In the recent Wall Street Journal, a recent poll by the Wall Street Journal found that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are statistically tied. And in fact, Donald Trump is at, I believe, 49, and Joe Biden may be at 48% as far as approval rating from overall voters. And this is one of the things that shocked George Stephanopoulos on This Week with George, on Sunday, that those numbers are as close. So he is unpopular, but the Democratic Party has a problem because Kamala Harris, according to NBC, Kamala Harris is the most unpopular VP in NBC News's own polling history. So Joe Biden is unpopular. He doesn't have a very strong VP, but at the end of the day, the Democrats have this is the best that the Democratic Party will have, which is different on the Republican side, because even if you don't like Donald Trump, and there are a number of people on the right who do not like Donald Trump and will not vote for Donald Trump under any circumstance, you do have, as you noted, a number of other candidates to actually choose from. And on the Republican side, I think that's actually good for our party to see that it's not just about Donald Trump. If you don't like him, if you don't like Ron DeSantis, you may like a Vivek Ramaswamy. So in that sense, I think it's very good for the Republican Party to have the number of people on the stage, even though on the Democrat side, they're not naturally going to have a challenger, but they're unpopular. And that's what makes this a very interesting race as well.
But isn't that unfair? Like, doesn't it feel like two false equivalencies? I mean, if you have two options that nobody wants, we just create the same storm, because this is what's going to happen. June of 2024. And they're debating, and it's going to seem like an old man tussle. And nobody, I don't care who wins the debate, the minds have already been decided. Like, Joe can't convince anybody on the right to vote for him. Vice versa, Donald can't convince anybody on the left to vote for him. So what are we arguing? And then we go through the games, right? This is when they call President Obama. He's going to do a 60 minutes with whoever. He's going to campaign for Joe. He's going to bring out all the campaign slogans and whatnot and fire it up and gin the base and everybody get excited. But he's not the candidate. That's not fair. That's like like the praise and worship team goes before the preacher, but that's not the preacher. Like just put the guy up, right? So you'll have that, and then you'll have Hillary. That Secretary Clinton will come out. I'm sure some bill will come out. But the problem is like George W. is not coming out for Donald. So, but you're gonna get like the concessions, like whoever he doesn't pick as a vice will support. So Tim Scott, even though I do think Tim Scott most likely will be his vice president, you'll get Tim. You'll get Nikki Haley. You'll get, you won't get Pence, but you will get, others, Ron DeSantis, and it will just seem like another bad play. Is this the time for ranked choice voting, or at least making other parties applicable? And I'm not saying, because I love Dr. Cornel West, but he shouldn't run. That's just my personal opinion. But let's just say should at least, because we only have two options, should at least Cornel West be on the stage at that time?
Well, sure. I think that Cornel West will be on the stage. The problem that we have here in America, in the United States, is that the people who complain about the voting systems, a lot of people, they have voter apathy, so they don't really get involved in this process. And so they don't feel like they are being represented by the people who are ultimately elected into power. And so the people who scream the loudest, may actually be silent when it comes to actually voting. And I think that that's one of the things that we have an issue here in America. Just our even if you look at where our voter participation rate in comparison to other countries around the world, ours is actually much lower than other places around the world, because we don't invest in our politics in the same way. Some of these other countries around the world, they have multiple political parties, not just one political party. They have multiple political parties. But as much as people say that they would actually like to essentially break up the duopoly, because that's what they talk about. As much as people say that they would love to break up the duopoly, they don't vote that way. So they only vote for the Democrat or the Republican candidate. They don't vote for the Libertarian candidate because they say the Libertarian candidate can't win. They don't vote for the Green Party candidate because they say the Green Party candidate that win. And then they say, well, dang, we're stuck with the Republican and Democratic Party. Well, you're stuck with what you vote for. And that's why I mentioned on the Republican side, we have a number of candidates to choose from. So I don't want, even though I have heard Republicans talk about it, but I'm not here to entertain any conversation from a Republican or really anyone on the right about our choices that it's Donald Trump. Clearly, there are more people in the party who are supportive of Donald Trump. That does not change the fact that we have other candidates. There are other candidates in the race that you can vote for. That's why I said this is not the case on the Democratic side. So don't get mad, if the majority of people on the right or in the Republican Party, as far as Republican voters, will support Donald Trump. there's nothing that you can actually do to change that dynamic. And what I would argue, many people on the right who are very frustrated, typically DeSantis supporters, because DeSantis hasn't been able to make any inroads in this race, they're upset that Donald Trump is has a commanding lead in this race. Well, that's who people better prefer. And there's only so much that you can do to change that. And I think that that's what they're experiencing now. You can't change it. Donald Trump, how is it that Donald Trump's popularity rises even a little bit after a debate that he was not even participating in? Yeah. I mean, don't get mad at Trump. These are Republican voters who are saying this, which I believe will make it a much more difficult race for Joe Biden than the Democrats actually believe. They think that this is going to be a cakewalk, and I'm not convinced that this is going to be a cakewalk for them.
This looks like a episode of NWA. Honestly, what we're about to go to, I'm like, look, this man putting out merch. This is about to get just wild. I got a few more questions. I'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
I literally just tried the best pre-workout on the planet. With Superpower pre-workout, you have increased focus and a power boost every single time you work out. It's not only packed with 225 milligrams of caffeine, but it also has citrulline and creatine. It's insane how much energy and focus I had during my workouts. If you're ready to take your workouts to the next level, then ditch your current pre-workout and get the Superpower pre-workout to be your own hero.
All right, y'all, www.cvmkglobal.store. Get it today. So let's say everything happens the way it looks like it's going to happen. We get the rematch, right? Best of 2, 3, whatever. We get the rematch. Is there I guess the best way to say, is there an appetite for like a hunger for maybe self reflection on either side? Like, and maybe let me clarify. If things don't change and both run into each other like this, it almost feels like, ugliness is, bound to happen, versus if either or looks at their policies, looks at their strategy and says, maybe we were too aggressive on this. Maybe we weren't aggressive enough. Maybe we forgot to include this particular demographic. Let's change not just the messaging, but the focus. Is there enough maturity on either side to pivot? Because this seems like a perfect place to pivot.
No.
Oh.
That and the answer to that question is no, because we've gotten to the point now that it's more so about payback. I always say that the political pendulum swings both ways, and people forget that. So things that you do when one party is in power, we're now at the point that when the next party get in power, the thing that they want to do is actually pay you back. So this is more of a tit for tat that happens in our politics. If you don't try to work with a Republican administration around the debt ceiling or the debt ceiling or the spending bill for the next year, then you may be willing to go to the line and actually hold up Congress. We may be going towards a government shutdown, where when the next party gets in, the opposite party gets in, that same thing happens over and over again. And it is a cycle that has repeated itself over and over. And it is encouraged in our social media space, where a lot of this stuff, this kind of nastiness in politics, a lot of that happens on social media. And I don't see a figure who can actually rally the country in any way, because that is what Joe Biden was supposed to do. Yeah. Joe Biden was supposed to, as he campaigned on, which came out of his own mouth, that he ran because he realizes that we needed to restore the soul of America. He continues to say that now. Karine Jean-Pierre continues to say that Biden ran to restore the soul of America. Right. I doubt that despite the whatever successes that Biden may have had as president of the United States, it's hard for me to take anyone seriously who argues that Biden has done anything when it comes to restoring the soul of America. The way that he's now decided to personalize his attacks, not against Donald Trump, not against Republican members of Congress or recalcitrant Republican members of Congress, he's actually directed his fire at Republican voters. And so I don't see how, once you start going after voters, which is something, if you notice, Donald Trump has never went after Democrat voters.
He never did.
Hillary Clinton went after Republican voters. Joe Biden and his MAGA extremists, and it's not just Joe Biden, the entire Democratic establishment is in on it. And that is from the Joe Biden all the way to the DNC and members of Congress. They're now attacking voters. And I think once you get to the point where you start attacking voters, you've reached the point of no return. So I don't see how any of this, even though I do believe that we need a reset, I think that our politics, our discourse is so toxic now that we won't be getting there anytime soon.
Jeez, that's sad news. That is definitely sad news straight from the pulpit. Last question. I was hoping, and as you mentioned, I was hoping for the reset. I think like a lot of us, I was hoping that President Biden would create a calmer tone and not demean or penalize the opposite side, but work on initiatives that will benefit both. I was like, okay, what you get this bill done, and then you give the other party something that they want, give and take, not a compromise. I think what other people are trying to be like, well, I'll compromise here, you compromise there. But it's like, look, if you really want, the vanilla cupcake, just give them the vanilla cupcake, right? And that's what I was hoping. I was like, hoping Joe was going to be wise about it. And he just kind of continued. Now we're at a point where it seems like nobody's talking to each other. And candidates like Will Hurd, who to me is a perfect example of a GOP, standout that should get a little bit more spotlight, don't get the shine. So because there's a lack of a buffer, should social media, what is the future of governing social media communication? Because I believe in freedom of speech. I'm not for censorship. I'm also not for the other extreme. And it's hard because it's like, how do you do both, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just like we're at a point now, it's like, if we don't do something, you just got a lot of negative noise. Is this the time to start creating a digital Bill of Rights?
Well, so I'll say this. The reason that probably the reason that I think that'll be problematic is that what we saw, not just now under the Biden administration, but even what was happening with our government during the Trump administration. A lot of these hearings that we've had about the FBI, the hearings on Twitter, when you saw it was Michael Schellenberger and the other journalist, I can't remember his name, but when they testified in Congress about what happened with those Twitter files, we saw then that under the Trump administration that the federal government was pressuring social media companies like Twitter and Facebook to censor not just simple political speech or hate speech or anything like that. We saw that they were actually using the federal government to pressure social media companies to censor speech that was not hate speech. And they've had to come back and clarify and retract and a number of that. So I don't think that increasing government's capacity to control that, I don't think it's great, because I don't trust the federal government, or in federal or local government. I don't trust government enough to feel as if it would not make very arbitrary decisions when it comes to that, because then you get into a who is worth being. It becomes more subjective,
right,
than an objective thing, and I don't. So that's why I don't think that's a good idea. But this isn't something, as I said, that I expect us to change. There are things that we can do, even in, the things that you learn in church, about being a better person and loving your neighbor and all of that, that still applies. But in this era of politics where it actually, it's profitable to be nasty, it's profitable to be disagreeable.
True.
And people make a lot, their social media influence is gained by doing this type of stuff. You just saw, I don't know if you paid any attention at all to Tucker's upcoming interview that I guess was tonight, where he announces that he was having a interview with this guy who claimed that he had sex with Barack Obama back in the 90s. What does that have to do with anything? It has nothing to do with anything, but yet that is a story that is now trending because people feel as if they need to talk about the possibility of Barack Obama having sex with a man in the 90s. This is the state of our politics. So whether it's on the Republican side or the Democratic side, I don't see any good faith actors who can rally either side because we're so dug in and we're so tribal. And I honestly do believe that we've just reached the point of no return.
Wow. That is gloom and doom, but you're absolutely right. One more break from our sponsors. I'll be back with my final word. Hey, what's up? It's CVMK33. Look, I want you to subscribe, hit the notification bell, subscribe here, everywhere, so you can get the latest and greatest of this podcast content. Stay tuned. Y'all subscribe. YouTube at CVMK. Instagram, it is what it is _show. CVMK _global. CVMK33. TikTok, CVMK Globe. As you know, it keeps going on. www.cvmkglobal.store. I think you're absolutely correct. We have entered into a space where it's not about information. It's about scandal. It's about sensualizing distorted truths. Even if there is some truth, the story behind the story, who did it, how, when, where, why. That has nothing to do with policy, nothing to do with the cost of living, nothing to do with the economic downturn, nothing to do with that, just gossip. And it seems like our politics and our politicians have turned into reality stars. And the stuff that we inquire, or not we, but the media is pushing out, is to get ratings and clicks because people want to know that. But I want to know, what can you do to ensure a stable economy for years to come? How can you make neighborhoods safe? How can we increase police protection, presence, and at the same time, community relationships? How can we increase safety within neighborhoods? How can we not reduce but eliminate crime, at least violent crime, right? There will always be idiots, but can we not make idiots this, right? Those are the things that I care about, and it seems like that's just not profitable. An allegation of some sort, if it bleeds, it leads, and right now that's the thing that's bleeding the most. So we are in a very, very dark time. It is depressing, but as I've always said, my hope is in nothing less but Jesus Christ and his righteousness. That's the old hymn go. This has been an amazing episode. Malik, where can they connect with you, man?
Right there. Actually, my handle, Malik Abdul, with an underscore at the end. That's NELIK Abdul, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also my website, melikabdul.com. But you can also, if you're in the DMV, you can find me on 11:40 a.m. and 13:90 a.m. in the DC Metro, and also on Kansas City at 104.9, 102.9 FM, because I'm a radio host for a local station here in Washington, D.C. So you can find me there as well as on Rumble on Fault Lines Radio.
Y'all connect with Malik, hit him up, listen to the radio show. Hopefully one day I get to come on. I'm gonna get my Instagram followers up, my game up, because I gotta build this thing out, because I gotta compete against the Roland Martins of the world.
Gonna have to get you on the show.
I appreciate it, man. But you know what you gotta do if you want to keep seeing amazing content and amazing leaders like we have on today. YouTube is 4 letters, y'all. CVMK is not difficult. It's in the name. Where it goes down, best podcast. You can get it on all major platforms. And I want you to get the physique that you deserve. www.cvmkglobal.store. Use code CVMK for 20% off. Until next time, guys. Thanks.
If you think exercise alone got me looking like this, well, think again. CVMK Global Super Thick got me right. I'm obsessed, and yeah, I won't stop talking about it because it helped me grow in all the right places. Its creatine provides a fast and reliable way to increase your power, size, and shape, and it's scientifically proven to help you reach your physical goals in a safe, controlled manner. So if you want to increase muscle size, pump, and thickness in your muscle groups, you need Super Thick.